Just imagine a bridge and how that bridge connects people to a place. It's the same idea with language and how a language connects a person to the outer world. You might be wondering, so how does a bridge connect deaf babies to their first language? And how is that language acquisition acquired? I'll go ahead and explain that. So imagine that a deaf baby is born. Those parents might be wondering, maybe I'll just go ahead and do an oral approach. But let's wait on that. Let's actually talk about ASL and how ASL is that natural native language for that deaf child. How ASL can actually support the deaf baby within their language acquisition. Research actually proves this. There's this thing called the critical period, interpreter error, and how when a deaf baby is born, from the ages of birth to puberty, the brain is actually really flexible and picks up on language really easily. Research actually shows this, that the initial period is actually much shorter, from the birth up to age 5, before the child even enters into a school system. So it's important that this crucial period from the first year, there are many, many things that are happening throughout that 1 year that is very important, and that helps support the phonological development of the deaf baby. 5 features will be demonstrated throughout this. 1 is Mother Therese. And this is the idea that the mother sets up the language. The mother and the baby will go ahead and make eye contact. The mother will sign very slow and very clearly articulating the sign so that way the deaf baby can see, and the deaf baby will have a very easy time understanding and picking up that language. The second feature is called joint attention episode. And this feature is where the mother and the baby look at an object at the same time. The mother will look and the baby will look. The mother will label the object or whatever it is, something, and this will actually help the baby's vocabulary around its surroundings. It can look and just identify and label, and the vocabulary will definitely take off. The third feature is actually called babbling. Whether it's the signs or the actual mouth movement, the baby can actually go ahead and experiment and play with its language. The baby can go ahead and play with linguistical words and systems and the grammatical structure and all the things. The baby could go ahead and just have fun with it. And it actually doesn't matter if it's a hearing or deaf child. Babbling and signing, whether that is in English or in ASL, is all the same. The fourth one is by 10 months, a baby can actually require up to 150 vocabulary words. The fifth feature is that a deaf baby can actually beat the hearing baby and know more vocabulary words up to 36 months. So that research actually proves that language acquisition before the age of 1 is actually really significant and important. Deaf babies who are exposed to ASL and deaf babies who are exposed to oral approaches show significant differences. And we actually went ahead and tested them. The result is that the ASL method beat oral method by a landslide. ASL babies were able to beat oral babies in reading and writing and lip reading, the SATs. The ASL method was able to beat oral method babies in learning language and actually learning English as a second language. Research actually proves that deaf babies need direct access to their own language, which is ASL. If ASL is pushed aside and not actually focused and implied, and if the oral method is implied, negative impacts will be implied to the child. One example of this is called late signers. And these are actually developed in different categories of late signers. We'll go ahead and describe those. Number 1 is when a deaf baby is born. starts with oral, but then starts signing at school. The second one is when a deaf baby is born, has oral, but starts signing in puberty. A third one could be the deaf baby is born and learns ASL as an adult. The fourth one is hearing loss, and the L1 is the English, and ASL is not learned until later. With all those different categories, deaf people might be able to learn ASL, but the impacts of their actual language acquisition will be deep and negatively impact. Research shows what I'm about to talk about. And an example can be the L1 acquisition of English. The late signers really go through difficult challenges. On the other hand, early signers can actually pick up English as a second language more at ease. An example of late timers, they have a harder time picking up on different ASL contexts. And actually, when late signers start to sign, their hand shape and their grammatical structures of their language is harder to understand. Catching up and being more native like ASL is just a challenge. Now, for an example, suppose a child enters a school at the age of 5 and starts learning in math and science and reading, and that child uses the adequate signing of a child who's the age of 5. People who learn ASL late cannot even do this. And even worse, the social interactions will be severely impacted. Now, in summary, these 3 points I covered, which are the critical period for language acquisition, and how a baby, when it's born, it immediately needs to start building its vocabulary and picking up its language. The second point is that ASL needs to be natural and accessible to be able to help the deaf babies pick up the language relatively easy and early on. The third one is that language delay causes weak phonological systems. When the structure is weak, then the language product and the results of that language will be negatively impacted. This will impact the deaf person's social and academics. So all in all, this bridge is really, really difficult to think about and to even discuss. Just with the idea of the phonological systems, if they're weak, then the language of picking up ASL will be difficult. So the idea of a deaf person in the hearing world, when a deaf person tries to enter the hearing world and learn English or be a part of academics or a social surrounding, the deaf person can be stuck.